Hello everyone, I am Mrs. Sinclair, your math queen, where I like to keep math simple and go back to the basics. So for my champion babies, we are doing Objective 17, and everyone else, we're going to be working on 7.rp.3. We're going to be working with word problems, solving multi-step ratio problems. Now, you'll hear me refer to the sauce a lot, and I like to use this little icon of Prego to let you know it's in there. Your information is always in the text. So when I refer to it's in the sauce, I'm referring to it's in your text. Let's jump right into this. Our first example for Objective 17, we're going to talk about how to recognize how to set up the proportion and utilizing the values given in the text to set up and solve the proportion. So let's talk about Chelsea. Chelsea is mixing her favorite hue of green paint. Her mixture requires 6 ounces of blue and 5 ounces of yellow paint, but she accidentally pours in 7 ounces of blue paint. How much yellow paint will she need to pour into the bowl that she's mixing? So let's get into some vocabulary that's very important before we get into this. The word proportion. So we'll be setting up proportions for each of these 5 examples. And when we set up those proportions, we need to know that proportions are 2 equal ratios. A ratio is a comparison of 2 things. In this case, we're comparing blue and yellow colors of paint. Now, the ratios can be written in 4 ways. We can use a colon, the word to, the words out of, or write it as a fraction, in fraction form. It's very important that we know that ratios are not fractions. Instead, we are comparing 2 things, not finding parts of wholes. But it will look like a fraction because we're going to be using the fraction bar. A variable. We'll be using a variable. In this case, we'll probably be using the question mark as our variable. A variable is a letter or symbol that represents a missing value. Hue. It's very important when we're going through this text that we not only pick out mathematical terms that we want to know, but also regular vocabulary that might be unfamiliar to a child. So I picked out the word hue, H-U-E. Sometimes even the pronunciation of that word might be difficult. So let's not take for granted what students may or may not know. But the word hue is a color. Mixture. Mixture is a combination of 2 things. Sometimes regular math words or regular terms in the text will give an indication of what we need to do mathematically. When we combine 2 things, many times that means adding. Let's find out if that's what this means in this case. May or may not be. Ounces. Ounces is the weight. It's often abbreviated with OZ, as you see in the multiple choice. Many times, if we haven't been introduced to measurement, we might be unfamiliar with those abbreviations. So it's very important for us to do that. All right, so let's get into this. Who are we talking about? Yes, we're talking about Chelsea. And Chelsea is mixing her favorite, remember, color of green. And in order to do that, we're mixing parts of blue and parts of yellow. When we get into this proportional reasoning, we need to know that one side of our proportion is going to be represented with the ratio, and the other side is going to be represented with what she actually did. So let's get down here. Some things that we're going to do first is we're going to pick out some important information from our sauce, the text. So here are some questions that you might want to do that. What 2 colors are Chelsea mixing? If we go back up to the text, we see that Chelsea is mixing blue and yellow. How many ounces of blue does she have? In our text, it indicates 6 ounces of blue. And how many ounces of yellow does the mixture need? I apologize. It's very important that we identify what the mixture is calling for in comparison to what she actually has. So the mixture calls for 6 ounces of blue and 5 ounces of yellow. But how many ounces of blue does she actually pour? She actually pours 7 ounces of blue. So we need to adjust how many ounces of yellow to match the proportion of what we need to have to make the perfect hue of green. So, do we know how many ounces of yellow she actually pours? No, we don't. Now, all of these questions I was able to answer with just looking at the text. Now, since it does not tell us how many ounces of yellow she actually pours, we need to remind ourselves by going back to the text. That's what they want us to find out. So, let me give you a little bit of a tip. How many values does the text give? Well, let's look here. We know that there's 6 ounces of blue, that's 1 value, 5 ounces of yellow, that's 2 values, and 7 ounces of blue that she actually pours. That's 3 values. And because it gives us 3 values, and it wants us to find 1 missing value, that's an indicator that we're going to set up a proportion. If you're given a ratio, for example here, 6 ounces of blue to 5 ounces of yellow, and that she actually poured 7 ounces of blue, and then it asks you to find the yellow. When you're given 3 values and asked to find 1, that's a good indicator, light bulb moment, ding, 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 that you're going to set up a proportion. So, in order to set up the proportion and to solve it, we need to use the information that's been given to us that we found throughout these questions that we asked. Now, when you're setting up the proportion, you're going to have a right side of your proportion and you're going to have a left side of your proportion. You're going to have one ratio here set equal to another ratio. Now, you're going to have your part-to-part side and your actual, what she actually poured. So, in the beginning of the text, it gave you that the hue of green that she needed for her mixture was 6 ounces of blue paint and 5 ounces of yellow paint. That's right from the text. Because blue is on top on the left side, the label blue has to be on top of the right side, as well as yellow on the bottom on the left and yellow on the bottom on the right. When you are setting up this proportion, that's the first thing that you need to think of, is you need to do your part-to-part ratio, and you need to look at the labels. Those labels are going to be very key when setting up the proportion, because whatever you have on the top on the left must be on top on the right. Now, we know that she has 6 ounces of blue, 5 ounces of yellow. So when we go to fill in the information or the values on the right side, we go into our text. If it was given that she gave us, if the text gave us the blue, that's what we need to fill in. And yes, the text said that she actually poured 7 ounces of blue. That's how I got that value. And of course, we need to find out how many ounces of yellow did she pour, because she accidentally poured an ounce over. So now all we have to do, once we have it set up, is to cross multiply, then divide. Cross multiply, then divide. So we're going to multiply number to number. If you ever want to remind yourself, what am I supposed to do? For cross multiplication, you always diagonally cross multiply diagonal. If you want to know which way to multiply diagonally, it's always number to number. You see, if we would have tried to cross multiply this way, it would have been number to variable, and that's not what we want to do. We always want to cross multiply number to number and then divide by what we didn't use in our cross multiplication. So in this case, our expression is going to be 5 times 7 divided by 6. Please remember, whenever you see this symbol here, this operation sign, it means to divide. So 5 times 7, 5 multiplied by 7 divided by 6 is 5.83 repeating. Now, if you go back up to our choices, we don't see decimals as our choices. Now, what you can do is you can hit that second function in the fraction to decimal, which is the PRB key in your TI-30s. And 5.83 repeating will convert to 5 5/6 ounces. So our ounces of yellow paint that we need for our mixture, because we accidentally poured in 7 ounces of blue paint, will be 5 5/6 ounces more. All right. So I hope that helped for example number 1. If you need to go through this, we're going to get to example number 2, but if you need to go through this, please make sure you hit rewind and you listen carefully to any of the instructions that we have gone through. Take care.